Hello and welcome. My name is Leslie. I'm with the Canada Revenue Agency, or CRA for short. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about the grant for the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program, or the CVITP. If you're in Quebec, the program is known as the Income Tax Assistance Volunteer Program, or ITAVP. We will go over how to find out if you're eligible for the CVITP grant and how to apply. I like to begin by acknowledging that I am on the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy people first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of land and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be ongoing relationships between nations. Given that we're meeting virtually, I also wanted to acknowledge the lands on which you are gathered from coast to coast and invite you to take a moment of silence to have a thought for the territory in which you find yourself. The CVITP grant helps community organizations increase their free tax filing services. This could mean hosting a clinic for the first time or expanding an existing clinic to help more people. Either way, the funding helps offset costs associated with running these clinics. During today's presentation, I will be answering some basic questions about the CVITP grant. We'll review eligibility criteria so you can take steps to ensure your organization qualifies. We'll then see how the funding amounts are determined and how much you can expect to receive. Then we'll look at how and what you will need to apply. Finally, I'll share some timelines to give you an idea of when to expect payment. To qualify for the CVITP grant, your organization needs to be registered and approved in the CVITP, or the ITAVP if you're in Quebec. You must also have at least 2 registered and approved volunteers in your organization. You must also have a CVITP organization identification number, also known as a COIN. Your organization must use the COIN on every return completed. Once these foundational pieces are in place, you'll have to make sure you've provided free tax filing services during the activity period of June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2024, and you must file at least 10 returns. Grant funding is provided retroactively, which means before you apply, your organization must host free tax clinics. Finally, applications will be open May 1st, 2024, and you will need to make sure that you apply before June 30th, 2024. Once your application is reviewed, you will get a determination letter telling you whether you have been approved. The CVITP Organization Identification Number, or COIN, is a unique 8-digit identification number assigned to all approved organizations that participate in the program. The COIN counts the number of federal income tax returns an organization files electronically using the provided tax software. The COIN is mandatory if your organization plans to apply for CVITP grant funding. Only returns filed using the COIN will be counted towards the amount you will receive through the CVITP grant. An organization keeps the same COIN year to year, even if it takes a break from participating in the CVITP. The COIN is only accepted in the software we provide. You can find instructions on how to enter your COIN in the online CVITP Learning Guide. There are two ways you can file tax returns using the coin: electronically using e-file, or by printing the return and mailing it to the appropriate tax center. The printed version of the tax return has a barcode that allows it to be tracked. There is no way to add the coin after the fact if a volunteer forgets to enter it before submitting a tax return. We introduced the coin in 2020, and it's not possible to use the coin to count tax returns for 2019 or earlier. The coin doesn't collect any information from individual tax returns. It's only a counter used to apply for the CVITP grant. If you've not registered received your coin, it will be included in your program registration approval email. If you misplaced your coin, contact your local CVITP coordinator. If your organization doesn't plan to apply for grant funding, using the coin is optional. Your organization can still file tax returns without it. However, we encourage all organizations to use it because it helps improve data collection and reporting for the program. Organizations eligible for the grant include nonprofits, charities, or other types of community organizations. Some examples of the types of organizations that participate in the program and are considered eligible include band offices, family service associations, multicultural societies, places of worship, post-secondary student groups or association, senior support and recreation centers, service clubs, settlement organizations, shelters and support centers, and volunteer bureaus. Non-community or non-volunteer-based organizations that normally operate for-profit cannot receive funding from the CVITP grant. It is important to make sure that the name of your organization is not that of a for-profit business. Also, if your organization operates under the office of a municipal councilor or a federal or provincial member of parliament, you cannot receive the grant. We want to avoid situations where it is perceived that a for-profit business or an organization linked to political figures received the grant. Funding amounts for the grant are based on three main factors. The first factor is the number of federal returns filed by volunteers affiliated with your organization. This includes returns prepared on the program-provided software and submitted electronically through e-file, and those printed and mailed. In your grant application, you must report the total number of returns filed. This means if you are applying for the grant, you must keep track of what was filed. We will use the coin to verify the number your organization reports on its grant application. Organizations may file returns for previous years using the coin, starting with the 2020 version of the software. The second factor is the total government assistance your organization receives. This is the total federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal funding received by an organization for running a free tax clinic. All grant applications must disclose this amount. We take this into account during the funding calculation. You do not need to include the CVITP grant your organization has received previously from the CRA or the Provincial Revenue Quebec grant. Finally, we consider other factors based on government priorities. For example, conditional amounts are being provided this year for operating within Northern Prescribed Zone, within a rural and remote area, and serving Indigenous communities. In May of 2023, we updated the funding formula to increase the amount of money awarded to eligible organizations through the grant each year. Under the new formula, all organizations received a base amount of funding. The base amount of $500 for organizations that filed 10 to 49 returns, or $1,500 for organizations that file 50 or more returns, plus $5 per federal tax return filed. There are also 3 supplemental amounts of $250 each for organizations that serve Indigenous communities or that operate in northern or rural and remote communities. We deduct the total government assistance from the total grant to be received. The maximum funding available to each organization is capped at $30,000. Your organization can get this amount by filing between 5,500 and 5,700 returns. Here's an example of a funding calculation. This organization filed 339 returns last year and served Indigenous clients. They also received $1,000 from their municipal government to host free tax clinics. Since they filed 50 or more returns, their base amount would be $1,500. We would then add $5 for each federal tax return filed for a total of $1,695, 5 times 339. When we add the conditional amount of $250 since the organization served Indigenous communities, this brings the total grant amount for this organization to $3,445. Lastly, we need to deduct the total government assistance they received from either a federal, provincial, or municipal government for their tax clinic. Only funds received from one of these levels of government should be included in this amount. Grants from Revenue Quebec for the purposes of free tax filing services and previous CVITP grant amounts received should not be included. After deducting the total government assistance, this organization would receive $2,445 from the CVITP grant. The application period for the CVITP grant is normally from May 1st to June 30th each year. To complete an application, your organization will require the following: the total number of federal income tax returns filed during the activity period. The number of returns you declare on your application will be compared to the number of returns filed under the COIN for your organization. Should there be any significant discrepancy between what you report and what we find under your COIN, the CVITP grant team will follow up once the application period closes. The total government assistance your organization receives from either a federal, provincial, or municipal government for your tax clinic. Only funds received from one of these levels of government should be included. Any grant from Revenue Quebec for the purposes of hosting a free tax clinic and previous CVITP grant received should not be included. Your CVITP organization identification number, or COIN, which is used as a counter for the number of returns filed by your organization's volunteers. With this information in hand, you can apply for the CVITP grant by clicking the green Apply for the CVITP Grant button, which can be found on either the main page of the CVITP grant or the subpage How to Apply. Be sure to read through the information on our web pages, including the How to Apply section and the CVITP grant terms and conditions, which can be found at canada.ca/free-tax-clinics-grant. In each of the first 2 years of the CVITP grant program, payments went out early the following calendar year. This year's application period closed July 31st, 2023. Since then, we've been finalizing the approval for our qualified grant recipients. The next step will be to send decision letters to both approved and denied applicants. If approved, we'll also send you a funding agreement, which you'll need to sign and return within a specific time frame. The agreement will ask for a bank account with a Canadian institution that accepts direct deposit. Your funding will be deposited into this account. We hope to send the payments in the fall to allow better planning for organizations going into tax season. We know these funds are important for your organization. Thank you for your patience. This is the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We hope we helped you gain a better understanding of the CVITP grant. For more information, please visit canada.ca/free-tax-clinics-grant. Today's presentation will be posted on the CRA's video gallery at canada.ca/individuals-video-gallery within a few weeks of our broadcast if you need a refresher. We also encourage you to visit our upcoming events page at canada.ca/CRA-outreach-events to view and register for any upcoming webinars. You can also send your questions about the CVITP grant to cvitpgrantg@cra-arc.gc.ca. Thank you and have a great day.